Hey guys, Andy here from Mediocre Hobbies, bringing you another video for the Horus Heresy playlist. This one is the most important video so far to me, and I don't know whether any video in the Horus Heresy playlist will mean more to me than this one. It is on my favorite Primarch, and that is the Primarch of the 7th Legion, the Imperial Fists, Rogal Dorn. Sentinel of Terra, all around badass, and an absolute treat to build and paint for you guys here today in this video. It was a really fun model to put together. It was not a difficult miniature to paint. I think the most time intensive part of the miniature was his cape and his sword. His armor and all that kind of stuff was actually quite simple and quite easy, and I really hope that this video helps you guys who have a Dorn out there kind of dust it off the boxes, get them built and get them on the table. So stick around and enjoy the video. Okay guys, the day has come. I get to build and paint Dorn. So this is how he came in the packaging. Obviously needs to get it all clipped up and cleaned up and kind of mold lines removed and all that kind of thing. I got his base constructed on my Twitch stream the previous Thursday, I believe, and got all the magnets in place and stuff, so those extra bits would sit in nicely, not fall off. Yeah, I was quite happy with how that result turned out. So as for the rest of the bits and pieces, I had to get them all cut out and cleaned up. Use a sharp hobby knife just to clean off any extra flash or anything left over. It's not going to go into depth about constructing a miniature. I've got a whole video on how to build miniatures if you want to check that if you're stuck at any point. But Primarchs kind of are nice and neat and tidy miniatures. They're usually very well casted and stuff like this. So there's about halfway constructed. This was the most important bit, and one of the parts where I was worried about should I do in sub-assemblies, is it going to block the arms, that kind of thing. But both of the arms have to be in very, very specific locations so that he's holding the sword perfectly right, so that it hits like a nick taken out of the cobblestone below with his chainsword. So in order to make sure that they were all lined up perfectly, I just glued all these pieces together, and it didn't actually impede me painting it whatsoever. I then gave him a coat of Retributor Armour Gold, as well as his backpack, power pack. His cape got a Chaos Black and then a Zenithal of Grey Seer. The gold also got an undercoat of Chaos Black before I did the Retributor Armour as well. And the face, exactly like the cape, got a Chaos Black and then a Zenithal of Grey Seer. These are perfect for the contrast layers that we will do on these guys later on. I then did the base fully done on another Twitch stream. If you're wondering how I did this, I'll put up two videos linked at the top of the screen now. One is for my Martian basing scheme. That is how I did this entire base. The Dead Marine is painted following the Sons of Horus painting guide in my Legion playlist. I have a video up there for every single Legionnaire, so if you want to paint him like a Blood Angel or a Thousand Sun or whatever you want to do, there's a video in there for you. I then wanted to make sure that there was no gaps in the Chaos Black, or sorry, in the Retributor Armour Gold. I wanted to make sure that the shades and stuff that I would put on later would have good purchase. So I went back over with Retributor Armour Gold on a brush and just gave the armor a very, very quick overbrush. I'm not trying to cover it in gold or anything like that. I just want to make sure that I didn't leave any gaps. Next, going to move over to Black Templar Contrast. And this is just for the piping on his armor. The only bits you can really see it are behind the knees. And then he's got a lot of those bits kind of around his hands and pieces like that. So just go around, try and find all the piping on the armor and give that a quick coat of the contrast black. Nothing special in this step. It's just it's great to start to kind of pull apart the amount of gold in this model and separate those panels out a little bit. Next, we're going to give the entire model a wash of Reikland Fleshshade. By the entire model, I mean all of the gold parts of the miniature. So this part and the power pack that was on the other base are going to get shaded with a Reikland Fleshshade. This is going to start to add some real depth into the power armor. It's such a fun step to do. All the details just explode out of the miniature. I do love that Dorn is in gold armor, trying to mimic his dad. The Emperor in waiting, if you will. But yeah, it's a quick step. This is one of those things where you do want to make sure that the Reikland Fleshshade does not pool anywhere it's not supposed to at all, because we're just going to add a light dry brush to this armor later on. and then that's it. We're going to leave it there. So big dirty pools of Reikland Fleshshade anywhere are going to look awful and are going to stand out a mile. So be very careful with this stage. It's your Primarch, so you're allowed to give it that little bit of extra time. Next, we're going to move over to Blood Angels Red Contrast and try and get that rich red cloak started. Like I said, the cloak and the chainsword were the two parts of this model which definitely took up the most amount of time, mainly because the number of layers that we will have to do on both of them, and both of them requiring multiple shades and everything. You'll see as the video goes on, but I think the results speak for themselves. It turned out really, really well, and hopefully you guys can get your Dorns done to this standard as well, and that you're actually really pleased with it. So quick coat of Blood Angels Red Contrast all over the cape, front and back. Don't worry about any of the motif bits on it or anything like that. We'll get to that later on. After that, we are just going to get a quick bit of contrast Dark Oath Flesh and go over the skin on his face. He does have a really tight, cropped, shaved head on the side, but there is hair there. It's not like that tuft of hair is coming out of the top of his head and that's it. So try to follow the line. Don't get the Dark Oath Flesh on that bit at all, because we're going to be using a bit of white contrast later on to do his hair, and you don't want the Reikland Fleshshade underneath that at all. It'll look a bit strange. So this is about all you want to do. He's kind of got a mullet, but let's not talk about that. Okay guys, while the shade is drying on the miniature, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you guys for the support on the entire Horus Heresy Legion playlist. If you don't know already, I have completed the playlist this week, if you're watching this on day of release or in the past sometime. I have all 18 legions from the Horus Heresy done as videos in this playlist, and as of Dorn being dropped to you guys, there's 3 Primarchs in there as well. So lots of other bits and pieces for you guys to check out after this video. If you are enjoying the series, if you like the video now, make sure you do drop a like below. If you have any questions about anything that I have done or anything you would like to see me do in the future, drop them in the comments below as well, and I will get back to each and every one of you guys. If you see real value in what I do and want to support me and make sure the 365 project is a success, the ways you can do that are hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified for all future uploads, and there are links to things like my Patreon and stuff below. Thank you guys so much for the support, and let's get back to the video. Okay, now that all those bits are dry, it's time to move on and start to bring those PA colors back up again. So the first thing we're going to do is go for our Leadbelcher base paint, and we're going to dry brush up all of that beautiful Reikland Fleshshade gold armor with a very light dry brush of silver. That's all we're going to do. It leaves an absolutely stunning effect, and I love leaving gold at that stage. It's how I'm planning to do my Custodes army and stuff like that. If you've been following along the channel for a long time, you'll know that I did this kind of thing on the Custodes videos I've done already, and I'm really, really pleased with the results. So go through, nice soft bristled brush, and basically what I mean by that is don't use an old dry brush that's got old hard paint stuck all over it, and it's not gonna, bend nicely across the miniature. Nice fluffy brush, bit of Leadbelcher, and just give the armor a quick dry brush. I'm going to show you a little bit now on his leg itself of the miniature, with all of those raised details across his hugely ornate armor. That silver dry brush really does catch all of those raised edges and give you a really, really nice result. With it all dry brushed, this is the armor that we are left with. Rogal Dorn's gold Oromite armor, which I think looks stunning. And that's it. That's all we're going to do to the armor panels themselves. We're going to start now working on all the detail around them, and it will take the most amount of time for all the other little details, but it's going to be super worth it. So going for Blood Angels Red Contrast. This is for his loincloth, and then we're also going to do this as the first coat across the casing of his chainsword. Nothing special, just a nice quick coat of red contrast across it. And then follow through with, like I said, the casing of the chainsaw sword, his chainsword if you will, with the Blood Angels Red contrast. This is where I'd like to focus on my knuckles more than I did the sword. I do apologize for that. Slightly annoying for you guys. I would have cut most of this footage out, but I couldn't find any footage of me painting this sword anywhere else, so unfortunately got stuck with this shot. There we go. So just follow through and make sure you get the front and back of the sword like that. We're going to use Fleshtearers Red to put a base coat on the handle or hilt of his sword. If you look at the artwork, that is indeed red as well, but it's very much a different tone of red, and we want to make sure that we capture that with our painting. After that, we are going to go over to some Leadbelcher silver, and we're going to do the actual teeth of his sword now. Once again, nothing special. Nice quick coat of silver down all the teeth around the front, and make sure that you do get the front and back of the sword. We're going to use contrast black Templar for the little kind of motor housing bit just above the red sword and below the red handle. Like I said, I'm following the reference pictures of Dorn you can find online. So if you're wondering about where colors go, maybe pull up one of those images as you're painting along to see what I'm talking about when I say things like the motor housing or whatever. If that doesn't ring a bell to you as to what that might be, then maybe following the picture will help a little bit more. Okay, with all those bits and pieces on, we're going to give the chainsword its first shade, and that's just a Nuln Oil all over everything except for the Oromite crossguard that protects his fingers. That's obviously we painted it up the same time as his armor, and we're going to leave that the same color as his armor. But the rest of the sword can definitely get an all over coat of Nuln Oil. Once again, make sure to get the front and back of the miniature. I suppose the sides help as well. This is one of the better reasons for leaving things like the cape off. It would be an absolute nightmare to try and get in at the back of that sword if his cape was already on. And things like dry brushing up his armor and stuff would have been a nightmare. Now onto the cape. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to layer it up for the first time with Mephiston Red. We will be doing another layer of Mephiston Red after we kind of shade it down again later on. Normally I wouldn't go through this many steps with painting a red cape or painting a chainsword or whatever, those kind of things. But like, once again, let's not forget that although this is a speed painting video, this is showing you guys really simple and easy to follow techniques to get Dorn painted. It's still a Primarch. It's still for sure going to be the centerpiece of your army, or a beautiful model on your shelf or your desk or whatever that people are going to be looking at. So it's worth your time spending a little bit more work on it. So with the Mephiston Red, you just want to follow the natural folds of the cape, leaving the kind of creases a little bit darker and basically layering up all of those raised areas. For such a big cape, I ended up feathering in the edges. You can kind of see the lines there on the right hand side, like some creases. I followed that and feathered in the technique along there. And after that, it looked something like this. This is my first coat of red, trying to make that cape pop. We're now going to move over to the Retributor Armour Gold, and then we're trying to do all of the piping and design that's on the back of it. So in the official artwork and stuff like that, the two lines that run along the bottom of the cape are two separate lines that you're supposed to paint in gold. This is not an easy thing to do. You need an extremely steady hand, and if you make any mistake, it's going to scream and glare out at you. So what I decided to do was count the two lines as one combined thing and treat it like piping going the entire way along the cloth, the cape. So I just filled in between the two lines and painted the lines themselves. This was a much easier thing to do than doing the individual lines. And I think it turned out pretty good. It looks even better when it's shaded down and layered up. But I think that's the right amount of gold for Dorn to have on his cape. So now we're going to go over to Reikland Fleshshade. Now, when I first started applying the Reikland Fleshshade, I was just aiming for the gold parts. But it then did occur to me that the cape is contrast and then a straight onto a layer job. And we didn't put any shade over to protect it from kind of scuffing and stuff like that. Plus Reikland Fleshshade is a really nice colour to put over red, add an extra layer of depth to it, and then we could do another quick layering job after that. So I decided after I'd done the gold bits that I was going to follow through on Reikland Fleshshade the entire cape. And this turned out really, really well in the end. Just trying to make sure that Reikland on the gold pieces don't pool anywhere and look a little bit silly. Obviously this is one of the most ornate capes that I've ever painted, and it's also one of the largest. So there's me now following through, being like, okay, now the Reikland Fleshshade will look really good across all the red. So I'm going to follow through and layer up the entire thing. Going quite thin on the raised areas and then just making sure that it kind of fills in all those recesses nicely. I'm not sure whether the cape or the sword took the most amount of time, but I definitely did feel painting both of those parts. Not unenjoyable though. I did actually enjoy the entire process of painting Dorn. Maybe for me it's just because it's Dorn and I love Dorn so much. But yeah, I definitely had a very good day getting him built and painted. Adding him to my small but growing Primarch collection, this being the fourth one technically. I just decided to paint them out of order. Once the Reikland Fleshshade had dried across the cape, this is what we're left with. So we're going to once again come back in with the Mephiston Red. This is going to give an even nicer, brighter, purer red because we're going over a washed Mephiston Red as it is. So this really pops off the cape. This is what I mean by following those lines that are already in the miniature to kind of feather in the next highlight. Going from the opposite side now. Exact same idea. Following along on the large raised areas and leave the shadows where they are. Definitely don't want to be filling those in. Sorry, as I'm watching this and talking to you guys, it's like putting me back in the moment of when I was actually painting it. And I'm like have this concentration on my face. So that was all the red done, and now it's time to move back to Leadbelcher, and we're going to just touch up all of the gold parts, add a quick layer of like layering to those. A few bits of dot highlighting, nothing special, but it will make the gold pop off of the cape, cloak, shawl, whatever Dorn calls it. Nice red cape, cloak, shawl thing. This is one of those techniques where you don't need to worry about it too much, just a few quick lines across the gold with the silver and it will make it pop and beautiful. So this is where we had the Chainsword 2 before or after the shade. So it's now time to move across and start layering that up. Once again, we're going to go for the first coat of Mephiston Red because afterwards we are going to wash the entire blade of the sword again when we get the gold onto it. And then we're going to add a second layer of Mephiston Red, just like the cape. I want those colors to kind of match each other as that kind of different points of color across a miniature, pulling it all together kind of thing. I don't want just the back of the model to be red and the front of the model to be gold. It definitely helps to have the same kind of color red across the miniature in different places. So quickly fill in all of the nice red in between all of the flourish designs down the length of the blade, casing. It's a quick step, one you don't need to be terribly neat with because we haven't done the gold bit yet. We're going to be doing that next. Once again, going back to our Retributor Armour golds to make sure that the tones match across the miniature. Then we're going to go in and carefully paint all of the designs going down the blade. It's one of those things that, once again, take your time with. This is your Primarch. I know I've said that a few times now, but it is. It deserves the extra bit of attention. Even if you notice, the majority of the videos that I put on my channel are kind of 10-12 minute videos where this is nearly half an hour. It's because it takes that much time to make sure that your Primarch stands out really nice. So we're going back over to the Retributor Armour, the Reikland Fleshshade, and we're going to wash down the red and gold parts of the sword, as well as the metallic parts, the silvers. This is once again going to add a really nice rich color to the red and the gold. And then once we give them a quick layer job, it's going to look absolutely stunning. So the first thing we're going to do is go to Leadbelcher, and we're going to give the sword a very light dry brush. This will catch all of those raised flourishes of gold with just a touch of silver, which will layer them up beautifully. The sword kept moving, which was kind of annoying me, so you see now I put my finger in behind the sword, just because I was kind of worried about it breaking or bending or anything like that. And also held it perfectly steady for actually doing the dry brush. But it's a quick, nice step, and it worked a treat. So with that, the teeth and the gold flourishes are now finished. It's time to go back in with that Mephiston Red, and then just touch in the casings again. Once again, you don't need to go crazy on this bit. There is already a beautiful red color there. This is just layering it, so you can leave some of the little corner parts and some of the little indents with the darker red. This is going to act like a layer or a highlight. So you don't need to go crazy trying to get in between each little turn of that gold filigree. That will only lead to you going mad or making mistakes and ruining the gold, which at this stage we don't want to get to. So this is the sword blade done with the red. Time for a bit of Screamer pink, and that's just to quickly layer up the handle of the sword. And with that, that will be Dorn's chain sword complete. I think it stands out a mile off the miniature. I think it looks really, really well. Like, I was quite pleased with how the cape turned out, but I was really pleased with the sword. I kind of thought I did Dorn's sword justice. So now we're going to go on to two contrast paints. The first one being Talassar Blue, and the next one in a minute will be Blood Angels Red. And they're for all the little gems and jewels that go across his armor. If you pay attention once again to the artwork and reference pictures that you can find on the Forge World website, you'll see that, for instance, like up his shin bone, there's gems all across his belt, there's gems on his shoulder pads, there's gems, sword, all those kind of bits and pieces. Half of them seem to be red and half of them seem to be blue. You can of course change your mind on this and do other things, but I'm just using Talassar Red and Blue, and I'm just filling over those gems. Because we have the beautiful rich gold highlighted with the silver, it means that the contrast over the top just makes it pop and it looks fantastic. These are just small, minute details that once again help break up the quantity of gold across Dorn's armor. Dorn seems to like his bling. Who can fault him for that? I think he carries it off quite well. So these are just like quick once over coats of contrast, not a lot of thought got into it. Now it's time to start working on that face. So after it's been washed and contrasted, it's time for some Cadian Fleshtone. Sorry, it hasn't been washed yet, it's just been contrasted, so it's Cadian Fleshtone before we do a shade. So this is where we're going to follow the lines of his face. His face is really, really well detailed. It's really quite clear to see which parts are the raised parts that need to be highlighted and which are the kind of creases that you need to leave the original contrast color in. So just follow this around, make sure you get them done, being once again super careful. I've switched to a small layer brush for this, so if I'm going to a small layer brush, it must be serious work. Any guy out there with their 000s, I don't know how you do it. Can't even see the tip of the brush, let alone use it. This is his face layered up with the Cadian Fleshtone. So now we're going to give it a quick coat of Reikland Fleshshade, just to put a bit of warmth back into his face. This is Dorn, he kicks about on terror all the time. Up in the Himalayas, bright sun. I'm sure he's got a little bit of a tan on him. This will once again act to smooth out the layering job we have just done, the Cadian Fleshtone. And then once that shade is dry, we're going to work on his hair. So we're just going to throw a coat of Apothecary White over Dorn's hair. And with that, that's me calling his face complete. You guys might be screaming internally that there's a million other things you could do with a Primarch's face, and if you feel comfortable doing that and that's what you want to do, please by all means go ahead, push it further, try and get in at those tiny little teeth and stuff. But with Dorn's face done, that's the miniature complete as goes painting. It's now time for the final assembly. So it's time to break these guys off of all of their temporary bases, which were just attached using a touch of super glue. So they should just pull off super easily. And then we can start getting the model assembled. So we're going to start with Dorn and getting him attached to his gaming base first. And this is that whole thing I was talking about with his arms needing to be in the correct positions. And I think that face looks pretty good. It might just be me. Because as you can see, the tip of his chainsword goes into a nick carved in the ground. So getting that all lined up perfectly meant that I wanted the arms on for painting. After that, I attached his cape and his big beautiful power pack. And then of course we added his head next. And here's what Dorn would look like on the gaming table, being pushed around, wailing on iron warriors, I'm sure. And then here he is on his beautiful display base. I really think the Martian scheme makes the gold and red pop on his armor. And I really like this color scheme, this tone. I'm super pleased I've decided to go with that. And then some quick 360s of him as a finished piece. And then I'll give you him without his scenic base in a minute. Once again, guys, I know this video is a little bit longer than my normal videos. I really did hope you enjoyed it though. I put a lot of work into Dorn. He means a lot to me. How I came to own him means a lot to me. So thank you guys so much for sticking around to the end of the video. If you liked it, make sure that you give the video itself a like, subscribe to the channel to see more awesome content. And if you want to support the channel even further, there are things like my links to my Patreon and stuff below. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys in the next video.